Well, hello there. I've just been told I'm on. So, here I am. I want to begin with a poem for you. The golden light is waiting for you. Align yourself with it. It is already in you. Stop for a moment. You're in touch with your in-breath, your out-breath, and feel. Sure as the sun is nourishment and light and dependability is always with us, so is the golden light. In the comings and goings of this world, we're blessed by what is near and what is far away. Reach out, bless someone with the breeze of kindness and compassion, with the breath of equanimity and joy. Are you ready for divine alignment within? It is divine because it is just you that is alive, and in you emptiness is alive, and around you act like all is possible. The secret of the golden light is it hides deep within the heart of consciousness. Become fully this light. See this world now, the world with your eyes of divine love, which is not yours alone. We are sustained by two powers, self-power and the power of others. Surrender the ego. Let it be touched by the golden light. Take the next step in depth. Reclaim how to go together. Rewire the brain from woeful endeavors. Take the next step, deepening with grace and with ease. Surrender to transformation. Dance, dance, dance with energy. Embrace, rest, still, be in the vibration of transformation that is this golden light. Thanks to Matt, we have playing a chant Om Namah Shivaya, um, done by Robbie Gass, who Peggy and I knew many years ago when he made this CD. It's there are many, many versions of this chant. But Shiva, if you don't know, is a major deity in Hinduism, is revered, and there are many chants and rituals. When I lived in India, I was always involved in some kind of ritual activity, which was wonderful, celebrating the archetypes and Ganesh and on and on. So Shiva is another one. Shiva stands for the cycle of life, that is creation and destruction in motion in a circle. And the wonder of preservation in the midst of that is Robert Wright wrote a book a few years ago, New York Times bestseller, called Why Buddhism is True. And he based his conclusions, which he explained very well, that Buddhism is the mirror of what evolution is about. Human evolution is constantly the process of discovering what is painful, what is suffering, what can be avoided, what can be improved, and doing it, and then doing it again, and doing it again. So it is not some abstract belief structure from nowhere. It's what humans have always been doing, discovering our suffering and responding to it as best we can. It has fancy names everywhere around the world, but it's basically that. And the mantra for Shiva for me, is the mantra of transformation. And in this understanding, transformation includes destruction. And for those of you who are anywhere in the world today, you can feel this destructive energy and attitude. But please remember, you can feel the preservation energy, the creation energy as well. Don't be seduced by the myths of doom uh, because we're more than capable of figuring out what to do next if we put our minds and hearts to it. So Shiva, when I lived in India, I lived in a neighborhood that had a mosque on one side, which is right next to where I lived. And so I heard early prayers in the morning, the call to the temple. And right down the alley where I lived was also a Hindu temple. And its processes of the day. And that included an altar to Shiva. And so at least once a month there'd be a group gathered from the neighborhood at that altar to say prayers. And for me, praying to Shiva is and is also the understanding in India that praying to Shiva is talking to yourself. You 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 are simply calling on your inner self, your inner awareness to be present. Many people, and sorry, most people, if they can, seem to go through life without ever becoming aware that there's an inner reality, an inner world to navigate, a landscape to love and cultivate. And for those of us who have been lucky enough to stumble into the reality of our own inner life, we should be more than grateful. The question for us is how to cultivate it, how to keep it natural, how to keep it loving, and how to keep it from wearing itself out. In Buddhism, renunciation is my topic for today. Nobody, nobody really wanted to talk about it. And so that's been my experience for years. What other people don't want to talk about, I end up talking about, which is okay with me. Renunciation is described in many ways, so I'm going to come at it from several ways for you. One is in Buddhism, in the Pali language, nekkhamma for renunciation. It's the formal rejection of worldly pleasures, desires, and attachments in the pursuit of liberation. It is not throwing things away for nothing. It is in the pursuit of liberation. It's why we practice. We do not practice to suffer. That's important to remember. But renunciation is beyond the material. Even the New Testament talks about this. It doesn't help much if you give all these great things to the world and your heart has not changed. There's a story about that in early Zen Buddhism with Bodhidharma coming to China for the first time and did a presentation before the high teacher in China of Buddhism, and the king, who asked Bodhidharma, I've given so many temples and orphanages and so many good things. Do I get any merit? And Bodhidharma said, no merit. After everything he said he did that was good, Bodhidharma said, no merit. And the king, I think it was King Lon, asked Bodhidharma, who do you think you are? And Bodhidharma said, I have absolutely no idea. That's one of my favorite stories from Zen Buddhism. It's so great and so true. If we could have enough space in ourselves to live undefined, unconstructed, unconditioned, What I mean is not trapped by, not cut off from the wholeness of life by these patterns and energies. Renunciation is not aimed at depriving yourself. It is to be positive. If it's not positive and not liberating, don't do it. It has a deeper meaning. It's the inward, it's the mind, learning how to control your mind. What that means to me is learning how not to do everything your mind tells you. It means learning when your mind speaks, you know that's what it's doing. And you know that's what it says. And if you want to inquire further, you can know where that mind thought came from. Did it come from society? Did it come from my family, my ancestors, my workmates, childhood experiences in school? Where did that thought come from? And wherever it came from is fine. What's important is that you know you're able to recognize the voices in your mind and able to evaluate their worthiness for you and for the world before you take up that path. Constant practice. I know. The fifth precept in mindfulness training is all about an area of renunciation, material goods. For example, I was listening to a Chinese scholar this last week, who said what scares him the most about society is we used to operate out of the idea of I think, therefore I am. He says that has changed. We're now moving into a society that's its mantra is I buy, therefore I am, which is a tragic way to try to summarize a human life, a human society, human relationships. Another poem I think that's important for me in remembering renunciation, Raina Maria Wilkie. Already the ripening barberries are red, and the old asters hardly breathe in their beds. I'm reading his words. The man who is not rich now, or you might say the person who is not rich now, as summer goes, will wait and wait and wait and never be themselves. The one who could not quietly close their eyes at night, certain that there is vision after vision inside of themselves, simply waiting for nighttime to rise all around them in darkness. It's all over for them. They are like an old one. Nothing else will come. No more days will open. Everything that does not happen and does happen will cheat him or her or them. Even you, my God, and you are like a stone that draws him daily deeper into the depths. This poem for me is important because it raises an existential question about our lives. Basically, what are you going to do with yourself? Basically, that's it. What are you going to do with yourself? And another philosopher long ago that I studied said the problem with being human is you have to do something. And you have to figure out what to do. And we have never had a more desperate situation to figure out what to do in than we have right now. Another way to describe renunciation comes from Nikos Kazantzakis, who I studied for 50 years. Here's a quote from his book, The Saviors of God. And I used to study this book with gang members in Chicago, as well as executives. They all loved it. So I'll read you a quote. God shouts, "Burn your houses, I am coming. Whoever has a house cannot receive me. Burn your ideas, smash your thoughts. Whoever has found the solution cannot find me. I love the hungry, the restless, the vagabonds. They're the ones who brood eternally on hunger, on rebellion, on the endless road, on me. I am coming. Leave your wives, your children, your husband, your ideas, and follow me. I am the great vagabond." Renunciation. What to let go of. When I look at the society in which I live, oh, we have so much to let go of, we can hardly imagine how to lift it. Years of dysfunction, corruption, tragedy, shame, regret, buried in our psyche, buried in our unconscious, buried so deep that here in the US, in my view, we elected our unconscious. Another renunciation is not just a matter of individuals. For me, it's a social matter. What is it our society needs to let go of? And another person I spent a lot of time teaching and studying from was called H. Richard Niebuhr. He was a theologian and professor. And in the matter of ethics, which was one of his priorities to discuss, he says there's four steps to being ethical. I would say there's four steps to having clarity about what the society needs to let go of. And the first step is to see what becomes apparent that results in innocent suffering. Where you see innocent suffering, that is the place to start. The first step. Wherever you see transgression, dehumanization, marginalization, that is the materialization. That is the place to start. The second step is to turn your back on it in your own life or in your own group, deciding what you will not do as well as what you will do. And many of us are already doing this from many perspectives, from ecology and how we shop and how we buy and who from. It's this process. The third step is to remember you're doing it on behalf of the whole society and that you are not more righteous. You're just the person who decided to do this. And his last step is you lead. You identify the suffering. You see if it's in where it is in your life. You abolish that, turn your back on that, and then you lead others in that same process. But begin with being able to identify innocent suffering, economic innocent suffering, political innocent suffering, and cultural innocent suffering. Recognize it, study it, be clear about it so we can understand each other more, so we can care for each other more and more wisely. I was at an education conference a long time ago, and we were in the third day of the conference, and I said, "Excuse me," during the Q&A period, "I'd like to have us talk about students." All the teachers were talking about teaching. And the idea that you could spend all your time talking about teaching without talking about who you're teaching means to me it's a little abstract. That has to be done, but you are teaching somebody, something, not an idea. Children, adults, students of classrooms, otherwise, are not ideas. They are real people. What does this mean in terms of renunciation in neuroscience? What we're learning, we have a long way to go here in what we're learning, but we have started to learn that we can rewire our brains because every cell in our body is gifted with what's called neuroplasticity. It can adapt, it can change, and it can adapt and change based on what we feed it, the ideas we give it, the emotions we dwell on, the relationships we spend time with. All of these rewire our brains. So another scholar from China, she wrote a paper not long ago, no, last year, and her question was, what are the psychological conditions we need to create so we can be together in safety, in justice, in harmony, and in productivity? I've spent this morning listening to many chants, many versions of
Shiva.
Om Namah Shivaya, and some are really joyous. Peggy and I have been to Kirtan, it's called, before, and if there's something like that near you, I would suggest you go. Because what I find is that while this is happening, there's this feeling that everybody has of going together in a certain direction, both vertical in terms of energy and horizontal in terms of connection to others. And so it occurs to me that we are bereft in this area. That we have some things, but the possibilities of having more creativity in this realm is very encouraging and very hopeful to me. So learning how to release our mental energy in the right direction. Thich Nhat Hanh would say, learning how to selectively water the garden of our mind and of our heart. What do we water and give nourishment to, and what do we not water and not give nourishment to? One of the ways of renunciation that might seem unusual, but it creates an opportunity for empathy for yourself, for your society, for your community, and possibly new ways to trust. I went through a day a week ago, and with a lot of different people caring for me because of my physical situation at the moment. People brought food, people came by and walked the dog, which made Tashi very happy, and plus I ate very well. And I was just amazed. There are people coming to my kitchen who I've never seen over and over again, different people bringing ways to sustain me, to care for me. And it didn't seem unusual. We know how to do this if we are able to get literally in enough proximity to have a care network, enough proximity to others. And this is important for several reasons. One is many of us are caregivers or about to be caregivers, can be children, parents, etc. But we also need caregiving. And so it's very important to have a network, a sangha, whether it's called that or not, of care for one another. Many years ago, I studied the Mormon faith because I was studying everybody, and they have a beautiful model in their neighborhoods of knowing every single household. Everybody had everybody else's number if you needed help. What a concept of care. And in contrast, I lived in Hong Kong in an apartment building that had 8,000 people. So we have this range of our living environment. And I have also lived uh, in mud huts. I've also lived dodging bullets, crawling on the ground. I've also lived on their jets. And they're all basically, to me, the same experience. Spending time wondering about life and what to do with myself. Renunciation. What am I going to let go of so I can move forward in the path of liberation? It's not the question of throwing things out. Like some of us, me, we go to our office and we start chunking things without paying attention to what we're letting go of. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about careful deliberation, careful care in what you want to surrender so you can move forward in your life. And we have neurotransmitters in our brain ready to help us make these kinds of changes. Dopamine, you've heard all these terms. I won't go into all this, the neurochemical aspects. But one of our greatest obstacles in renunciation is fear. Fear of letting go. Krishnamurti, in an interview, said he was not afraid of death. He was afraid of what he had to let go of. He had to his fear was he had to let go of what was familiar, what was ordinary, what was habit, what was wonder, what was grace, what was relationships that he knew to let go of knowing and this comfort of routine. We are in the midst right now of rewiring our neural pathways. Our 10 million guests neurons in our brain is the estimated number. They talk to each other. Our brain, while it has hemispheres, but the whole brain works together. It's important to remember. It talks to itself. It reorganizes itself depending on what we feed it, what ideas we give it, what breath we give it, what joy we give it, what anger we give it, what anguish we give it. And all those things are a part of our life. I'm talking about what we dwell on. I'm talking about what we really give our attention to. Because what we really dwell on and give our attention to, the mind becomes. And that's a neuroscientific statement, not just a Buddhist one. This renunciation has to do with acceptance of what is real. It's following up on our truth session. What is appropriate to let go of. And, this can be simple. It can be material, non-material. I have a friend who has a business of antiques, and he has too many. And and he has antiques from an era that no longer purchases them because the era no longer exists. And his children don't want it. And he's built a big warehouse to house everything. But he told me teary-eyed long ago. He wished he knew how to get rid of all this stuff. And so don't let yourself end up that way. Let go of what can bring freshness into your life. But that it bring any freshness, any new breeze, any new energy, excitement, hope. What good is it to keep? Um, Peggy and I get to practice this over many years. We have moved. People are always asking us, "Where do you live now?" And you were here, you were there. Yes, it's true. But we're not the only people in the world who moved a lot. But in moving, you do get to practice renunciation very concretely. What are you going to move and what are you not going to move? What are you going to carry? And this is an important question for society, every society. And if you look at the world right now, and look at South Korea, look at Japan, where I have been, you'll see a shift in population that is dramatic in terms of decline. But if you look towards Africa and Latin America, you see a shift in population that is growth. And you can go around the world and analyze this yourself. There are many reports, but the world is changing. That's not ever the problem for me. The problem for me is now, what am I going to do? Now that I know this. I had a teacher once in my earlier religious community who said, when things start to go downhill, don't worry about that. Put your mind and heart on the next hill. When decline is, I used to teach the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, among many other things I taught in an academy I was a part of the faculty of. Uh, but there was prophets in the Old Testament who used to say to society, when everybody thought everything was so wonderful, for example, if he went into a meeting that was a billionaires club, that prophet would start out by saying, "Woe unto you! Stop!" The prophet would not be interested in collaborating. The prophet would not be interested in being fair. The prophet would be interested in being righteous, honorable. There's a movie coming out about the life of Jesus, which there's a couple of scenes in it that are really interesting, in case you're interested. But throwing money lenders out of the temple, that is important teaching. Money lenders should never be in the temple. But we have built a society in which there are hardly any temples anymore, any cathedrals anymore, any churches anymore, any mosque anymore. There are banks. There are tech buildings. And while those functions in society are there, I'm not knocking them. I'm talking about our symbols of what it means to be truly human are confused. I think, therefore I am. The Chinese scholar I listened to last week says it is now shifted to I buy, therefore I am. I'm going to keep repeating that to sink in. So the question is, how do you want to define your humanity? This is the question for all of us that we face. And we don't have all the time in the world to respond to this question. It will require courage and trust and new ways of being together. So if you have a chance, I would encourage you to go to a kirtan. My first one was in India in 1977. I was living in a little village working on agricultural products and roads and building schools and sanitation and living in the village. I was invited to a bhajan or kirtan ceremony, and we went into a little room, and the music was there, and people were there. And the chanting started, and it went on for about an hour. And when we were done on the way out, the chant master said to me, "Have you ever been through anything like that?" I said, "Well, actually, yes." It reminded me of the 4 o'clock in the morning prayer meetings my grandfather used to take me to on Sunday morning. I mean, it really did. The vibration was the same. The sound of humanity recognizing itself was the same. We have got to take advantage of what we can learn from looking deeply instead of basking in superficiality, often for commerce sake. Renunciation is your decision, is my decision to go forward, to take a step into the unknown, to take a step into the next depth, the next heart, to expand our capacity for love. This is our next step as a species. And that love is not the love of anything, not watches, not cars, not TVs, not houses, not positions, not the neighborhood I live in or the brands I wear. It's nothing to do with those things. But it has everything to do with our reclaiming our humanity. There's emotions and forces that have been working for some time and are getting more certain in helping us dehumanize ourselves. Don't let yourself be dehumanized. Claim your renunciation. Rewire your brain from the colonial ways of thinking. Experiment with change and transformation in little things. Don't try to do anything too big. Walk to school a different way. Drive to work a different way. Eat with the left hand instead of the right hand. Start small. And everything I'm saying, I do and I've done. Go through a different door. Do whatever you can to break small patterns so you can begin to rearrange your neurons in your brain and the networks for more flexibility. At the same time, we all must really cultivate our care for the second aggregate, according to Buddhism, of feelings. Positive feelings, negative feelings, and neutral feelings. Right now, the world is awash in the media of negative feelings. There are people who are making millions of dollars a year telling us how negative everything is. I would believe them if they weren't making millions of dollars from telling me that. I can think for myself, and we must retain the awareness, so we must think for ourselves. I heard somebody last week say, "Oh, the Supreme Court should." I thought, "So Supreme what?" That's my decision. Do not turn your power over to an institution that always ends bad, because the institution by nature only works to keep itself going. If it doesn't, it goes out of existence. And I watch us around the world be involved in processes of decision making that we have tried for years and that have failed for years. We keep doing the same process. We already know it's not going to work, but we go through the motions and we're busy. I spend a lot of time in economic development around the world, village development projects, inner city development projects, poorest of the poor development projects in Calcutta, India, in Kenya, and so on, AIDS projects and on. There is enough talent in the world and enough heart in the world and enough genius in the world to solve every problem. What I spent the morning in the world of Hinduism and chants, etc. And what strikes me over and over is the togetherness of the experience. And I contrast that with my daily life. And, we're together when we're at the mall and at the movies. We're together in entertainment. But to be together in presence is quite different. To be together in soulfulness and the sharing of that soulful energy is quite different. And we must find new ways of doing this immediately. Because it's that energy and the mind that energy creates is the mind that can create the new world. That's why for me it's important. It's not a luxury. It is not some religious thing. It is a human thing. If we can reach the level of consciousness, that's just the next level. Not far from any of us, just the next level. What we see as the problems of the world today will vanish into a explosion of creativity and care. We have the resources. We throw away the resources. We just throw away millions of dollars of food for hungry children. Literally, we burned it, is what I just heard. What is this? Renunciation is also social. So we need to say, no, we don't burn the food for hungry children. No, we don't support war making like we are in Gaza. That's just the colonial mind on top of the colonial mind. And that is out woefully tragic. It's a habitual pattern of trauma, which creates more trauma, which recreates the pattern. I think that should be quite obvious by now. It's true in every period of history and with every peoples. The people who are less familiar socially are suffering from being disconnected to what is actually happening in the world today. The high power positions in society are lost in terms of being in touch with what's going on in the real world, the everyday world, the Henry and Gladys world. the world of moms and children and people who go to do a job, whatever that work is, which we all can be grateful for. Disconnected. And it is therefore unwise to have people who are disconnected in charge. How would they know? How would they know what to do? How would they know where the suffering is if they don't live in a place with windows to see it? Or are unwilling to be wise, unwilling to be compassionate, unwilling to be clear and awake. I've heard all this stuff about an anti-woke movement in the United States, and I learned a little bit about the curriculum. Is basically how to be a bully. Huh. Sounds awfully male to me. Sounds awfully patriarchal to me, which I've never been able to stand ever since I was a child. I didn't have to wait this long to know this is stupid. And we have to be able to call things out, people. This is not a time to be silent. Otherwise, stupidity will reign. And if you look around everywhere in the world, you can see it. We do things that make no sense. We spend billions of dollars to figure out how to kill each other instead of what we could do to feed each other, what we could do to care for each other. We have some super talented creatures around the world, but we are most often, not totally, but most often engaged in a way that we are disrespected, underestimated. And I don't know how to describe this, but the glass ceiling of whatever society you are in is real. And you know this, or you should know this. And we have to break it everywhere because if it exists anywhere, it is not gone. It will be replicated. A person I respect a lot, his name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Lutheran pastor, Nazi resistor. He was such a resistor, he was arrested by Hitler and put in prison, and then later hung by Hitler for being in a group that was planning to assassinate Hitler. And Hitler hung him just a few days before the war ended. One of the things he taught was that freedom and responsibility are the same thing. They are not different. If you have freedom, you automatically have responsibility. Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, we have a great, well, we had Statue of Liberty on the East Coast. We should have a statue of responsibility on the West Coast. This is the way Thich Nhat Hanh used to say it. Liberty is responsibility. We've got that wrong otherwise, real wrong. And you can see the consequences of that wrongness every day, wherever it may be. But most personally, it's important to remember where we are in our stage of life. Already, the ripening barberries are red. And the old asters hardly breathe in their beds. The one who is not well now as summer goes, will wait and wait and wait and never be themselves. Don't wait. The world needs you. We all need you. Your gifts, your talents, your pain, your trauma, because together we can heal all that. That's why. And this might be a newsflash, but when we are not together, we cannot heal all that. Because we are designed by evolution to be together. Our greatest, well, I'll use a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that's coming to mind. Our greatest task of being a human being is to overcome the illusion of separation. Separation from each other, between each other, amongst one another, from the earth, from the fire, from the waters, from the wind. I had a great experience this morning on the porch, looking out at the forest behind our house, and a young deer came by. And I was able to be still enough where it kept coming. It came up to our St. Francis statue and started to nibble on the little bushes, flowers there. It stayed around for about 10 minutes. And I stayed as still as I could. And I realized how lucky to be able to have that experience. I also thought, how could I kill that? I'm just talking about me. That came to my heart. How could I destroy that life in that form? In all of these forms, what we have is life, people. I had a native friend a few days ago who's from Peru. Her roots are Peruvian. And she was talking to me about the stone people. I don't know if you have any stone people in your neighborhood, but I hope you do. Peggy and I taught once with a teacher, indigenous woman. Was she
She was a
Cherokee?
Lakota.
Lakota, and her name was Loretta Afraid of Bear Cook. And she told us she got her name in her tribe. You got your name by what was going on at the moment you were born. And the moment she was born, there was a bear turned through the village. And so that fitted into her name. How wonderful. But she had the capacity to almost, it seemed like,
She did.
turn people into stone.
She mesmerized us.
People were mesmerized by her teaching and could not move. The other story that I remembered that came up for me in this was Saint Clair in France, famous for being a compadre with Saint Francis. When she decided to go into the nunnery, her family was not happy about it at all. They had other plans for her life. But she was going through a period of renunciation. She was going through a period of deciding where she was going to spend her energy, spend her life, spend her mind, spend her heart. So she was walking to a nunnery to join. And her family members, several of them caught up with her,
Wow.
5 Peggy, remember, and tried to stop her. And they could not move her.
They dragged her.
They dragged her, but it did not work. And if you ever get a chance to go to Assisi in Rome, outside of Rome, she has a great church there, and her body is there. And for me, having your body there is ultimate commitment. So what are you going to do? What are you going to let go of? What are you going to surrender, however small, that can help your journey of liberation? And that can help your journey of care for the world. Maybe it's a change in your schedule. Maybe it's I've had the luxury of people calling me on the phone I haven't seen in years. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a tea or a coffee date. But be active in the journey. Don't go to sleep at the wheel. Stay awake to the wonder that is here for you, wherever you are, and however small each day. Do not carry a sack of regret on your back or a sack of shame to be hung around your neck. You don't have time for that. You may have it, but then time for that. It is time for your very best. And your very best is bigger than your shame or your regret. Remember that. You are more than
Or despair.
or your despair. Yes, there may be despair there. It is also impermanent. It's not a separate self. There may be some pain there. Yes, but it is not a separate self. Water the seeds of your joy as often as you can. Sing, dance, paint, write. Light up the world with your golden love. Thank you.